You don't even have to sob. Sometimes it's just one bad phone call, one silent minute on the couch, one moment where your face changes, your breathing shifts, and your dog, who was half asleep across the room, suddenly lifts their head and looks at you differently. Then, they get up. They come closer. They nudge your arm. They lean against your leg. Sometimes they put their head in your lap. Sometimes they just sit there and stare, like they know something has changed, even if you never said a word. Most people think they understand this moment. They assume the dog wants attention, or they're reacting to noise, or maybe they've simply learned that crying leads to petting, hugging, or your voice getting softer. And yes, sometimes learning is part of it, but that's not the real reason. What's happening is much deeper than that, because when your dog responds to your tears, they may not just be noticing a sound. They may be picking up on a full-body shift in your emotional state, your face, your posture, your breathing, your tension, even the chemistry of your stress. And the science suggests this is not random sensitivity. It is one of the most unusual emotional links ever formed between two different species. Let's start with the simplest explanation first. Your dog hears crying, gets curious, and walks over. That sounds reasonable, but here's where it gets interesting. In controlled studies, dogs didn't respond to crying the same way they responded to other human sounds. In one well-known experiment, dogs were more likely to approach, nuzzle, and orient toward a crying person than someone humming. And they did this not only with their owner, but even with a stranger. That matters, because it suggests they weren't just following a personal routine, they were responding to distress itself. A later study found a similar pattern and linked stronger approach behavior to signs of stress in the dog's own body, pointing to something more than curiosity. And this is where most people get it wrong. We talk about dog comfort behavior like it's a trick, as if the dog sees a sad human and performs the "go be cute" routine. But attachment science paints a different picture. Decades ago, researchers adapted the same strange situation framework, used to study infant caregiver bonds, and applied it to dogs. What they found was startling. Dogs show organized attachment behavior toward their owners. They seek proximity, use their person as a secure base, and behave differently when that person leaves and returns. In other words, your dog is not just living with you. Your dog is bonded to you in a way that has real psychological structure behind it. So when you cry and your dog comes closer, that movement may mean something very specific. Not, "What do I get from this?" but "something is wrong with my safe person." That sounds almost too human, but that's only because most people still underestimate what dogs are actually reading. Dogs can discriminate human emotional expressions. They can tell positive from negative emotional cues in faces and voices, and they can integrate information across both senses. That means your dog is not relying on one clue. They may be processing the whole pattern at once. The tension around your eyes, the break in your voice, the change in your body, the emotional tone of the moment. And the science gets stranger, because this is not just perception, it's physiology. One study found that dogs, like humans, showed a cortisol rise specifically after hearing infant crying, not after control sounds. Another line of research suggests that when dogs are exposed to human distress, part of what drives their response may be emotional contagion, the most basic form of empathy, where one nervous system begins to reflect the state of another. Your dog may not understand the story in your head. They do not know why you're crying, but your internal state may still be reaching them. Now add bonding chemistry on top of that. In 2015, researchers showed that mutual gaze between dogs and owners can increase oxytocin levels in both, creating a positive feedback loop across species. That is extraordinary on its own. Oxytocin is deeply involved in bonding, affiliation, and social calm. So when your dog moves toward you in distress, makes eye contact, stays close, and you touch them back, that interaction may be doing more than comforting you emotionally. It may be activating a shared biological system that reinforces safety in both directions, not metaphorically, chemically. And if you zoom out far enough, this stops looking like a cute household moment and starts looking like 15,000 years of evolution. Dogs were not shaped merely to tolerate humans. They were shaped behaviorally and even genetically to attend to us, read us, seek us out, and remain socially open to our signals in ways wolves do not. Research on domestication has linked dog hypersociability to genetic variation in regions associated with unusually strong social attraction to humans. That doesn't mean your dog is thinking in words, but it does mean one of the oldest pressures in their evolutionary history has been this: notice the human, stay near the human, respond to the human. But there's one more layer to this that changes everything, because the deepest part of your dog's reaction may not be that they notice your sadness. It may be that, in a very real biological sense, they begin to share it. That may be why some dogs do something so specific in those moments. They do not just notice, they close distance. They lean, they lick, they paw, they place their body against yours, like they are trying to change the atmosphere around you with contact alone. And maybe, in a primitive but very real way, they are. Research on dog-owner interaction keeps pointing to the same unsettling idea. Your dog is not separate from your emotional weather in the way we usually imagine. Once the bond is strong enough, your state starts to matter inside their body, too. But here's where it gets even more interesting. A lot of people hear this and jump straight to, "So my dog feels sorry for me." Science is more careful than that. Researchers usually avoid claiming dogs experience empathy in the full human sense. That word carries too much meaning, too much imagination, too much mind reading. What the evidence supports more comfortably is something both simpler and, in some ways, more haunting. Emotional contagion. Your dog may not understand your heartbreak the way another person would, but they may still be affected by it. Your distress can become part of the environment they are responding to. And once that happens, comfort behavior stops looking like a trick and starts looking like participation. That also explains something owners notice all the time, but rarely think about deeply enough. Why some dogs look agitated when you cry, why some pace instead of cuddle, why some whine, some freeze, some climb into your lap, and some stare from a short distance like they desperately want to help but are not sure how. Different dogs respond differently to distress, just like people do. In one study, dogs were faster to get through a barrier to reach an owner who sounded distressed than one who was just humming. But the dogs that seemed most affected were not always the cleanest rescuers. Sometimes the bond makes action easier. Sometimes it makes the dog too stressed to think clearly. That matters, because it means an imperfect response is not indifference. Sometimes it is the opposite, and this is where the science stops being sentimental and starts getting strange, because the bond between you and your dog may not just be emotional, it may be regulatory. A 2024 study in Scientific Reports found that dogs and owners showed linked heart rate variability patterns across interaction and rest conditions. Heart rate variability is one of the clearest windows we have into the autonomic nervous system, into whether a body is settling, straining, recovering, or staying on edge. Higher HRV generally reflects a more relaxed, regulated state. Lower HRV is often associated with strain or stress. In these dog-owner pairs, the owner's physiological state and the dog's physiological state move together, not poetically, measurably. So when you cry and your dog comes over, what may be happening is bigger than observation. Your breathing changes, your voice changes, your facial muscles change. Your scent may change too. Research has shown dogs can distinguish human stress odor from baseline odor using only breath and sweat samples. In other words, even before you speak, your body may be broadcasting a different message than it was a minute ago, and your dog may be built to detect it. Then, once they come close, eye contact, touch, and proximity may begin nudging both of your nervous systems in a different direction. That is why this behavior can feel almost supernatural to owners. Not because your dog is reading your thoughts, because your dog is reading signals you don't even realize you are sending. And dogs are absurdly well designed for this. Over thousands of years of domestication, the individuals that stayed socially tuned to humans had an advantage. The friendliest animals, the ones most comfortable approaching us, living with us, monitoring us, and cooperating with us, became the ancestors of the dogs sleeping in our homes now. Some of that hypersociability is even reflected in their genetics. Your dog's interest in your face, your voice, your emotions, your movement, your tension. None of that is accidental. It is ancient. But that's only part of the story. Because when people ask, "What does my dog think when I cry?" the most honest answer may be this. Your dog may not be having a sentence. They may not be thinking, "My human is sad and I should provide emotional support." What they may be experiencing is something older than language. A shift in the person they are attached to, a disturbance in the body they use as a secure base, a change in the emotional field of the room. And because you matter to them, they move toward it. That is the part most people miss. Your dog's response to your tears is not only about sadness, it is about significance. You are important enough to monitor, important enough to soothe, important enough that your internal state changes their behavior. And once you see it that way, a dog resting their head on your knee while you cry stops looking small. It starts looking enormous. There's one more thing I need to tell you, because it may be the most important part of this whole video. If your dog has always been the one who comes to you, follows you from room to room, settles near you when your mood shifts, and one day that pattern changes suddenly, do not ignore it. Sometimes the reason is simple: a change in routine, a new environment, a new person in the house, stress, fatigue. Dogs are sensitive to disruption, but sometimes a withdrawn dog is not becoming independent. They are becoming uncomfortable. Pain conditions like osteoarthritis can show up as difficulty rising, less jumping, less movement, less willingness to climb or come close the way they used to. In older dogs, changes in social interaction and sleep-wake patterns can also be warning signs of canine cognitive dysfunction. So if the ritual changes, pay attention. A dog cannot explain aching joints. A dog cannot tell you their nights feel strange now. A dog cannot say, I still love being near you, but something in my body is different. They can only say it with behavior, and behavior is the language they have been using with you all along. So the next time your eyes fill up and your dog appears almost instantly, remember what you are probably looking at. Not pity, not manipulation, not acute coincidence. You are looking at an animal whose brain, body, and history have been shaped to notice you with extraordinary precision. An animal who may not understand your story, but still registers your state. An animal who has spent thousands of years evolving closer to us than any other species on Earth, until our signals became meaningful inside them. Your dog may not know why you cry, but the science suggests they know it matters. And in that moment, what they seem to think is something very close to this. Something is wrong with my person. I need to be near them. Honestly, that may be one of the purest forms of love most people will ever experience. If this changed how you see your dog, subscribe and tell me what yours does when you cry. And if you want to understand why your dog stares at you when you're completely silent, that next one goes even deeper.